All right, we will give it 1 minute while everyone is still joining, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. By way of introduction, my name's Renee. I am the recruiter for our Senior Product Manager technical role here at Amazon. I've been here for 4 years on the MBA team, and I'm excited to dive into the PMT role here today. So if you want to move it over to the next slide, we'll walk through the agenda. Thank you. So first, we'll go through a recruiting timeline for PMT specifically. We'll go through panelist introductions. We'll then provide an overview of PMT, some career stories, and then move to a Q&A. I do want to call out that we are having an issue with our chat feature here today. So if anyone on the call has questions for our panelists, email us at mba-recruiting@amazon.com. My teammate Laura will be monitoring the inbox and will put forth any questions to our panelists. So again, one more time, our chat box is not working. Any questions for our panelists, email mba-recruiting@amazon.com. All right, we can now move over to the next slide, which we will discuss our recruiting timeline. Perfect. Thank you, Deepika. So many of you may already be familiar with our recruitment process and timeline from some of our other sessions we've hosted, but I wanted to run through them really quickly here. So applications for our Senior Product Technical intern role actually went live yesterday. We are currently in the process of posting those on your Career Center job portals, but if you go to amazon.jobs, you'll already be able to find the Senior Product Manager Technical application on there. The application process is very easy, where you provide some basic information about yourself and then attach a copy of your resume. Again, at Amazon, no cover letters are needed. So during this time, I recommend working with your Career Center and some classmates to get feedback on your resume to really make sure you're highlighting your skills and experience in the best way. Something that I would say that is particularly helpful for PMT is if there's any languages that you know, like SQL, Python, Java, I would recommend listing those out on your resume so it is very clear that you know those. Also, just some best practices, put your graduation date. So if it's May 2026, be sure to list that out and make it very clear for us. So while there isn't a specific application deadline, to be very transparent, we are reviewing applications on a rolling basis. So again, our application went live yesterday. I've already been reviewing all of the applications that came in. So given this and the fact that we only have a certain number of students we're going to interview, I definitely encourage you to submit your application as soon as possible. So if I was in your role, I would, today, tomorrow, within the week, get your application in there. So once you've submitted your application, you can relax and our team will contact you should we decide to move you forward with your application. The next phase would be the online assessment. Again, not everyone receives the online assessment. It's only candidates that are selected to move forward in the process. There is no need to study for the online assessment. Just so you know, it can take up to 90 minutes to complete. So you'll want to make sure that you can dedicate time and space to really focus on the questions. Once you've completed your assessment, you can pat yourself on the back, and should our team decide to move forward with your assessment and your candidacy, we'll contact you in mid-December through January to schedule a virtual interview. Again, mid-December is when that first batch of final round interview invites will start to trickle out, but those are sent on a rolling basis. So you can receive that up all the way through January, potentially even February. We'll host interview prep sessions and office hours as we get closer to that time frame, but I recommend thinking through 6 to 8 examples that you can talk through in depth regarding a specific problem you solved and keeping up to date with some of the amazing things Amazon is working on. In addition to that, and Jordan will actually join us later to talk about the tech assessment, but really thinking through, a technical product and the technical aspect you worked on. But again, more to come from Jordan later on that. Back to the timeline. Once you've completed your interview, our team will connect with you within 5 business days with your interview outcome. Should you receive an offer, your offer will include the location of your offer, benefits, and a placeholder start date. Offer packages are standard, reviewed on an annual basis, and not negotiable. You'll have roughly 2 weeks to ask our recruiting team specific questions related to your offer before you make an offer decision. And as the season progresses, your offer decision timeline does decrease. But again, that decision timeline will be very clear in your offer letter. If you have questions about your application status, we appreciate your patience as our team is reviewing all applications and encourage you to check your candidate portal. Again, your candidate portal is going to give you the best indication of where you're at in the process. So now I'll go and transition it over to our panelists. I have Stephanie, Dorothy, and Jordan here with me today to share their experiences in the role of a PMT. We'll have some live Q&A at the end. Again, send your questions to mba-recruiting@amazon.com, and we'll make sure to get all of those answers. So let's go ahead and give a warm virtual welcome to our panelists today and kick it off with some introductions. Stephanie, you are up first.
Hi, all. My name is Stephanie. Before business school, I worked in consulting and decided to transition to product management because I wanted to stay with a project for longer than just the typical 3 to 6 months. And so I decided to join Amazon because of the breadth it offers. There was a huge range of projects within Amazon that I really wanted to go and explore as someone who was new to product management. So I started in AWS as an intern. I came back to AWS, spent a few years there, and then switched over to the consumer side and work on Alexa right now. I have a few pictures on the screen. So I have the top left one is a bunch of interns actually from Amazon. We were all just went to market days in Seattle. And then I have skiing. I really enjoy skiing, and I've done a few ski trips with coworkers. And then got a dog, got inspired by Amazon to get a dog. Dogs are allowed at the office. And then I also really enjoy hiking, and I've gone with my family to a few spots. But I will now pass it off to Dorothy.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I think we can advance to the next slide as well. Thanks. Okay, so I'm Dorothy. Before business school, was working in digital marketing at an executive recruitment firm in Chicago. One of the things that I led while I was there was our website redesign, and that sort of was my first taste into product management, of working cross-functionally with engineers and designers and really understanding what it meant to lead a customer-facing, in this case, software change. And I was really hungry to understand how to make that into more of a career. So that led me to do my MBA at the University of Michigan, Ross School of Business. While I was at Michigan, I did my internship at Amazon as a PM internship, and I worked within the transportation middle mile org. And then when I came back full time, I joined that same team as a senior product manager, and then quickly transitioned to the PMT role. So I can talk more later about what that transition looks like and the differences between a PM and a PMT at Amazon. And was just recently promoted to principal PMT, so can speak about that as well. In the photos you can see the Just Walk Out, that's the team I'm on now. And that is, if you've seen any of our cashierless stores, so this is one of my first weeks within this new team, which is now under AWS. And then the photo to the right of that are a bunch of Amazon colleagues who we ran a 10K together. There's lots of outdoor activities, as Stephanie mentioned, that you can take advantage of if you end up in Seattle. And then bottom left, I went to University of Wisconsin for undergrad. So I had to get some of my Wisconsin friends in there. And then bottom right is actually my husband and I. My husband is also at Amazon. So lots of Amazon couples. We didn't meet here, but we can commiserate over the highs and lows of working at Amazon together. So with that, I can pass it off to Jordan.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jordan. Just to give you a bit of my background, and I think we could also change slides. But while we're changing slides, I came from consulting. So I was previously at Deloitte, where had a really good introduction to working with engineers more broadly, and also understanding like how to build architectures. But I knew that consulting was somewhat of a stepping stone for me, where I was trying to figure out what to do next. And I ended up going to a startup before business school called Equi, which was essentially a fintech that I helped build from the ground up, which was a really exciting experience because we were somewhat successful, scaling to like $100 million and from 4 people to 60 quite quickly. But we didn't quite have like a lot of scale or data focus that you might want as a product manager. So I decided to pivot from there and actually go to business school. And in business school, like many of you, you get to get like a deep product chops if you take a lot of product classes. And I decided that, I wanted to continue in the product domain. So I felt like going to Amazon would be a great place for me to, get experience working at scale that I previously had never really seen. I started off also though as an intern. I was on Amazon.com working in the personalization space. So again, that's really data focused, almost moonlighting as a data scientist, thinking about how you can take, different customer behaviors and use data to inform or change those behaviors, which is pretty interesting. I returned actually this year, about 3 months ago, as a PMT with Alexa Kids, which has been very exciting because there's a lot of good work going on there. Handing it off to you, Renee.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. And sorry, everyone, we had some technical difficulties. We will be getting back up the PowerPoint presentation momentarily. All right. So moving on, talking about the role of PMT. And Jordan, Devka, it looks like your slides are back up. If you want to move over to the next slide, we can see Jordan's pictures that he so graciously added for us. So moving to the next slide, if possible. All right, well, it looks like there's still some technical difficulties, so we're going to move on to the role overview of a PMT. Stephanie, if you could join me on camera, I have a few questions for you. So first question is, can you provide us an overview about the PMT role?
Yes. So overall, PMT, your role is really just the development of products. So you're starting from the idea, developing a whole vision and strategy, and then seeing it all the way through to launch, as well as post-launch activities as well. So that include measuring KPIs. It could be launching additional add-ons to that overall product. And then on the technical piece of it, the main difference is you're facing a little bit more on what I would say like is a technical product. A lot of your customers or interactions are going to be more heavily skewed towards engineering.
Got it. And Stephanie, just another follow-up question that I have here is, do you think there's a difference between what a PMT role looks like in one line of business versus another within Amazon?
There is a huge difference in my view. So my first role was within AWS. We were a really small product and team. So I was working with marketing, talking about what's our marketing campaigns, being super involved, talking with BD, doing even customer research and doing customer interviews, and really working with everyone within that single product. Versus now I'm on Alexa. We're a massive product. I don't interact with marketing. I don't really do customer interviews. Actually, we have a whole team that specializes in customer interviews and a whole team that's dedicated to marketing. So I get to really specialize in my area versus the previous role, smaller products, you're touching and interacting with like every aspect of the product. So you can get that whole range at Amazon, which is why I really like and enjoy working at Amazon.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie. And then a final question for this. What is unique about being a PMT at Amazon in particular?
So other than the broad range and being able to, the scale that you get to go at, but you can also go very small and get more of a startup-like feel, is our writing culture. We spend a lot of time focused on writing and going really deep into details. And it's not so much about how well you can present, like in, how pretty your PowerPoint is or anything like that. You spend time writing, and then your meetings are actually driven off of these documents that you write. And there can be a huge range from, a quick one pager to help drive a decision in a 30-minute meeting, to very large PRFAQs that are 6 pages that are talking about a full product launch, that'll take like an hour plus to review, folks.
And it's totally agreed. The doc culture is very unique here. And just wanted to say it is not uncommon when you join a meeting and there's a doc to review that they might give you the first 20, 30 minutes of the meeting to simply read through the documents and then discuss after. So definitely something unique to Amazon. Now we'll transition it over to the next slide. A common question that I get from students. Dorothy, if you would like to join me on camera for this one. A common question I get from students is, what's the difference between a PM and PMT at Amazon? If you want to move it over to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So Dorothy, can you differentiate between the role of a PM and a PMT?
Yeah, it's a question I hear a lot also. It's a really fine line, to be honest. As to be a PMT, you need all of the core skills that a product manager would have. I would say that the main differences really come from the depth of technical understanding that you have into your particular product. So, for example, you need to be able to deep dive with engineers to really understand why solution should be used over another. You need to understand how it adds value to your customers. You need to be able to understand the technical architecture that is behind it so that you can help making those feature decisions on a more technical level. How we're going to design this in the back end, or do we need a new API? I think that a good PMT has the ability to be a translator between business teams and technical teams, and really be able to kind of speak both languages. So you're working with customers, you're working with business teams to understand what you want the product to be like, but then you have to work with engineering teams to say, how do we deliver that and make it work from a technical standpoint?
Thank you, Dorothy. Definitely makes a lot of sense. Again, just want to reiterate to everyone in the audience, if there are any particular questions that you have for our panelists, I know this is a lot of new information, emailing mba-recruiting@amazon.com. We will be sure to get those questions addressed during our Q&A portion. One additional question I have for you, Dorothy. So a PMT might be wearing different hats depending on the product lifecycle stage, including the role of a regular PM, a project manager, a product marketing manager. However, their core job will always be to articulate customer needs to engineering teams and advocate for what is best for the customer. Which brings me to my next question. What kind of technical expertise is expected for a PMT?
Yeah, I think it varies. You can see from my background that I didn't have an engineering degree. So I think really just being curious and being able to dive into the details of a certain technology. So for example, if you're new to a project and the tech is completely new, really being able to deal with that ambiguity and being able to ask the right questions, dive deep with an engineering team to understand what decisions have been made to date, what are some of the pain points moving forward, and then again, always being able to work back from the customer, being able to diagnose technical problems, but from a customer standpoint, and how do we make that experience better for the customer themselves. So no specific like take this class or be fluent in this coding language. It's more just being able to get in the weeds and understand those technical problems.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. We will now move to the next slide to talk about knowing our customers and our stakeholders. So Stephanie, I'll ask you to join me on camera for this one. All right, so my first question for you, as a PMT here at Amazon, who are your primary customers?
Yeah, so background is first like my area in Alexa. So I work on the platform team of Alexa. So if you think of an iPhone, you have all the apps, which are different experiences, and then you have the operating system. So I basically work on the team that's the operating system for Alexa. And so my primary customers are actually the teams that are creating the end experiences for customers. And so we're making sure, do they have the right information? Do they have the right APIs? Like, are we being efficient with our cost checking metrics and everything like that? And so we monitor those teams' needs and also how that impacts our downstream end customers as well.
Thank you. That makes sense. And then next question is, who do you interact with the most internally? Is it PMs, analysts, data scientists, system developers, engineers? And what are these relationships like with each of these teams?
Yeah, so I interact on that whole range of folks. Right now, I'm spending a lot of time with PMs. So I'm working with our internal PMs. We're doing a lot of brainstorming, collaborating. We also have a good system in place for guidance and support, and kind of we do jam sessions, which are, you have an idea, just throw it out there, whiteboard with the whole team. And then I'm also working with PMs from our downstream team. So a smart home PM, a music PM, to understand what experiences they're trying to deliver and how we can enable that for them. And then I'm also working with engineers. We've got a whole team of engineers working together. So I joined their daily sprints. We're also looking at our costs and taking inventory there, as well as, helping them deep dive into bugs. I also work a lot with our data scientists on AI and what the new models are, and evaluating our investments in that area, as well as figuring out which of these investments can actually hit the quality bar that we need to deliver a delightful experience to customers. So those are the main folks we interact with. And then right now we're actually short on a business intelligence engineer. So I'm de facto acting as that right now. So doing a lot of data analytics as well, and reaching out to other teams' BIEs for guidance.
So Stephanie, just a follow-up question. I know AI is a really hot topic when we go on campus. To what extent, you mentioned you work with a team that is involved with AI. What is your extent and experience using AI as a PMT?
Yes, so there is using AI to help me do my job better, which for the BIE or for the BI business intelligence engineer or data engineer, I use ChatGPT not ChatGPT. We have our internal tool on our own, LLM to help coding and help write queries and everything for me. It's super easy that way. I also use it to help edit my docs. And then I'm also involved on the product side of it. We're doing a lot of investments within the AI space. And so we're working a lot with data scientists on that actual development as well.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing more about your customers. We will now hand it over to Dorothy to talk about career growth at Amazon. All right. First question, Dorothy. Do you think students from alternative backgrounds can become a PMT?
Yes, I think I alluded to this earlier, but I did not have an engineering or a technical background. In my undergrad, I studied psychology, so I graduated with a BS in psychology. And then I just had a series of roles or projects that I worked on that were more technical heavy. And I think it was more growing my interest than my skill set in the beginning. I mentioned that I helped redesign our websites, and I also led all of our social media marketing before social media marketing was really a thing. Just as I've continued coming into Amazon as a PM and then transitioning to PMT, I have just, I think, lead with curiosity, and just don't be afraid of asking stupid questions and talking to as many people as you can and learning as much as you can. I definitely don't think you need to have an engineering background or a coding background to be successful.
Totally agree with that one. You mentioned you originally joined Amazon as a PM and then made that transition to PMT. So can you talk to us just about how did you make that transition and how did you gain the necessary technical skills to be a PMT?
Sure. So I think a lot of it, again, is learning on the job. So I was lucky enough to sort of be placed back on a team that had a lot of PMTs. When I was doing my internship, my project happened to be international expansion. So that wasn't very technical. That was more
Yeah.
looking at, where should we go next with our product? And then when I came back, again, same team, but now I had to actually work on the details of the technical product to do the uh, geographic move beyond the US. So part of it is just sort of getting lucky with the project that you're on or the product that you're on. If it has, again, the like technical architecture, understanding pieces, it's a lot easier to sort of learn on the job and make your case. If you join as a PM and you're on maybe more of the retail side or not a technical product, there are still ways that you can learn more about it and then try and transition into a product that is more technical. So some of the things that you can do are, sitting in with principal engineers and like listening to design decisions that they've made. The engineers here host a lot of these sort of like lunch and learns that you can learn more about their product and the decisions they've made. I found a mentor who was one of my SDMs at the time, and he was really great and sort of being a sounding board for questions that I had. And then there's all sorts of training that you can take within Amazon. I did a machine learning university, they called it, and that was like a kind of like a class where you got to use real Amazon data and learn how to do ML and kind of grow that
Very cool.
that technical understanding.
Very nice. Well, thank you for that. Next question I have from you. I know you mentioned you started off as a senior product manager then went to a PMT. Now you're a principal PMT. What is the next step in the career ladder for a PMT? And any advice on how to get to that next step?
Yeah, so I think there's two ways you can go. One of them is you can level up. So that was what I did, was going from a senior manager PMT to a principal product manager PMT. You can also move into a manager role. So a manager of product managers, they call it. And then there's also, lateral growth. So if you wanted to maybe become an SDM and learn how to manage engineers, or if you wanted to go to a program role, there's also like lateral movement that you can do. So it's really what you make of your career.
Awesome. And what do you think in particular did you do to differentiate yourself to get that promotion and move from an L6 to an L7? Definitely challenging to do. So I'd love to hear some advice on how you are successful doing that.
Well, I had a very supportive manager who kind of helped push me, and that was super helpful to have. So make sure you find a good manager. But I would also say Amazon is really great with being very transparent about leveling guidelines. So you can see leveling guidelines for every function and then every level. And there's all these categories that say, if you want to move to this role, you have to have done this. And you pretty much need to tick every box and be able to show like artifacts such as a lot of our writing samples that Stephanie mentioned earlier, and showing the ability to deliver results. So there's also a whole other process of creating a promotion doc, and then you have to get people to like sign off on your promotion. It's definitely a long process, but I do appreciate that Amazon is very transparent on what exactly needs to be done to kind of meet that next level.
Agree. The leveling guidelines are incredibly helpful because it is very clear what needs to be done to get to that next step. Stephanie, I'll actually ask you to join us on camera from this one. I know you mentioned you were a PMT on one team, then you transitioned over to AWS. Can you just talk to us, Stephanie, a bit more about how you made that transition from team to team? Was your manager supportive, and like what led you? It sounded like the two roles of PMTs were very different. Like what led you to decide to switch teams?
Yeah, so I wanted to switch because this is my first role in product management, and I wanted to explore both the enterprise side as well as the consumer side. The main difference that I've seen is the enterprise side, you get a really interact with the customers. You have non-disclosure agreements, so you can go and do your own user studies and everything. The consumer side, you don't have that, but you have tons of data, and the scale that you have it at is unlike anything else you'll see in enterprise. So, Alexa customers, we have hundreds of millions of customers, and I'm, looking at the data through those, the trends, the click-through rates. Meanwhile, on the enterprise side, I said we were a really small team. So we were looking at like 1,000 customers. So the scale was very different. My manager was very supportive of me exploring and looking at different opportunities, and it actually helped connected me with the team that I'm on now. And to switch teams at Amazon, it's very similar to if you're interviewing. We do what we call like internal loops. So you go through an informal interview process, you meet various other people of the team and get to see if you're a good fit, and then go through the transition process that way.
Very helpful. Thank you, Stephanie. I know that that's a common question because within Amazon University Talent Acquisition, we do have a fungible placement process. So initially you are placed on a team given like just business need and a variety of other factors. But what's very unique about Amazon is you are able to, if you have a dream of being on a particular team, you are, after your first role, you are able to make that transition. And we don't have any set timeline like other companies. I know there's like a hard policy of 1 year you need to be in the role. Here at Amazon, we really don't have that. And everyone I've talked to, very similar stories to Stephanie in the sense of like managers were very supportive and helping them make that transition to a different team. So very, very nice to hear. Thank you both for that. Now we will transition it over to talk about the PMT interview. I'm sure this is top of mind for everyone that is currently applying to our role and going through the process. So Jordan, question I have for you. So for the PMT intern role, candidates have 2 interviews. So the first interview is behavioral based. It's based on our leadership principles and your prior experience. And the second is the tech assessment. So I know a lot of people, want to know, can you just talk to us more about what the tech assessment looked like for you?
So when I got to the final round interviews, they were 2 back-to-back. One, the behavioral that was just mentioned, and the other was, I would say, slightly more technical in nature. But honestly, they were both just kind of discussions that I was having with the person who was leading the interview. And it was hard to distinguish which was which. So I think like the best thing that you can do when preparing for both of these interviews is actually go through the LPs, learn about them, and be prepared to talk about them in light of the experience that you've had. And if that is in some degree, related to product work or previous customer work that you've done, I think that would be very helpful in the process. But you shouldn't necessarily be preparing to answer highly technical questions per se. I think they'll mostly be still related to behavioral style questions that are more of a discussion where you're discussing, what you've done in your past, and they'll likely be tinted in a technical nature, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan, for that. Next question I have is, how did you best prepare for the tech assessment? And I know you came from a PM background, so would love to hear, given that, how did you prepare?
Yeah, so the way that I prepared for both the interviews is I went through each of the LPs and I listed out technical stories that I had that related to each of them and best expressed the values of the LPs. I think questions that people might expect or would be good for them to prepare for are, tell me about a time that you had to work on a technical project. And in my interview, that was something that I basically did. I just talked about that question for maybe 45 minutes or more. And yeah, be prepared to dive deep just on something that is technical in nature.
Makes sense. And then you mentioned, so you have a PM background, but you mentioned previously that you have quite a few friends that didn't come from a PM background. interview for the PMT role, were successful. They didn't necessarily have direct experience. So how did your friends without that direct relevant experience prepare for the tech assessment in particular?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I've had a bunch of friends who also converted and joined Amazon with me, and they had all different kinds of backgrounds. I prepared alongside with them, and we both took the same approach on the LPs, really drilling down on the LPs, but also trying to relate instances where we've done technical work or client-facing work or customer-centric work. So it kind of all circles back to the LPs and having that technical tinge wherever possible that we could highlight.
Absolutely. And just for everyone here today, just so you know, the number of PMT intern openings for this year is absolutely through the roof. We have tons of openings. The business is excited about our PMT hiring as well as with our other roles, but we have a lot of PMT intern openings. So with that said, everyone on the call, I would encourage you, prepare with second year students who went through the Amazon PMT interview process, but also just prepare like Jordan with other first years that are also interviewing for PMT. There's plenty of roles. You are truly competing against yourself. So thank you, Jordan. We'll move over to the next slide to talk a little bit more about the intern experience. So I know when you first joined Amazon as an intern, how did you come up to speed in your role on that true day one of your internship?
Yeah, it can be quite daunting to come into a big organization like Amazon, have no context, and then just kind of be expected to jump in immediately and contribute. Fortunately, Amazon recognizes that, and they do a really great job of providing a standard onboarding plan. So your manager will work with you to put together an onboarding plan that goes through really like weekly goals that are quite granular on what you're expected to learn in each week and what you're expected to. These goals might be as granular as, you should meet with XYZ people, read some documents, and then, you're well on your way to being fully onboarded and helping make decisions and drive outcomes. So that's one of the main things is like complete your onboarding plan, which will also have like any necessary trainings, but also go out and try and meet as many people as you can across teams. So not just the people immediately on your team, but try and develop a network within Amazon to understand, what different positions there are and how you collaborate with those people.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. Would also be curious if you could tell me more about the projects you were assigned during your internship.
Yeah. So some people are assigned only one project depending on the complexity, and others have more. I had two projects. One of them was the personalization project that I'd mentioned earlier, where I was given kind of this very broad mandate of, hey, we have a theory about how user behavior works within our specific application. We want you to go figure out what kind of algorithms we could put together to actually increase whatever behavior you decide is important. So it was really fun to have, like, quite honestly, a lot of leeway in how I drove the project and what the outcomes that I wanted to focus on were. And then the other project was more on personalization. Or not personalization, but globalization. Basically ensuring that we had consistent experiences across all of our global platforms. I think Amazon exists almost across the world. There are a ton of different domains, and it's quite hard to make sure that all of our features are in parity. So that was something I was focusing on as well. As kind of a final outcome to that, I was writing a PRFAQ document, which I think we'll talk about more.
Awesome. Well, definitely, it sounds like you had some great projects to work on during your internship. Curious, what did the final intern evaluation process look like for you?
Yeah, so most of the interns will do some kind of presentation, I believe, at the end of their process. Mine was to a group of, I believe, L7s, so a couple of people who were leveled up from where I was. And I didn't know any of them, so it was mostly anonymous, but your team will be there to support you, especially your manager, which is nice. And you give this presentation on whatever the core thing that you were delivering was. In my instance, it was a PRFAQ, which is a 6-page document that details some kind of product idea that you have. And then you write FAQs, which are questions that might be either hotly debated topics where, there might be some controversy or disagreement amongst you and the people in your group, or really just like broad questions that just have to get answered for this to move forward. And so you basically have a short reading period, as Amazon does, where the people in the meeting will read through your document, and then you go and answer questions and kind of defend your thesis.
Awesome, thank you. And then finally, my final question, any tips for students on how to be successful as a PMT intern and get that full-time return offer?
Yeah, I would say a few things. One, be really willing to adopt the Amazon culture. It is very unique from where I've worked. And it's not just like the writing, but the LPs themselves. I think the faster that you can kind of buy into the processes and mechanisms and the LPs, the more success that you'll have faster. So that's definitely one of them. The other is that, you shouldn't have any surprises in your final intern evaluation. It's likely that you'll be working on a PRFAQ, and if that's the case, it should be well circulated by the time you actually get to the final presentation. So definitely lean on your team to help you in that regard as well.
Thank you, Jordan. Now I'll ask Dorothy and Stephanie to join us as well as we move over to the next slide. And in this next slide, just would love everyone to come on camera, Jordan, Dorothy, Stephanie, and give one piece of advice for our audience here today as they begin their MBA program. Stephanie, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first. So my advice on the overall MBA program is it's a pretty safe space to fail and like try something else new, and it's fine if you fail. I actually kind of wish that I had failed more in the MBA program and tried more things out. So I would definitely encourage, folks to get out of their comfort zone and try new things that you may not be good at, and that's fine.
Absolutely. Dorothy, you can be up next.
Sure, that was a great one. Mine is, there's a lot of questions, especially in this room, around what type of technical background do I need? What skills do I need? But my advice would be use this time to also kind of strengthen your communication skills, your soft skills, collaboration, leadership, working with other people, managing ambiguity. I think those soft skills are sometimes forgotten when you're looking to go into a technical role, but the MBA program is a great time to sort of use those skills in a safe environment.
Thanks, Dorothy. Jordan, one piece of advice?
I would say +1 on the soft skills and the hard skills. I would also say, join clubs, like meet other people, network. I think joining the tech club was extremely helpful for me because it gave me a great network of people to practice interviewing with, and also helped me, understand what to expect in terms of the interviews that are common on campus. So definitely advocate for you joining whatever tech kind of club you have on campus.
Absolutely. We will thank you all for the advice. +1 to all of that is very great advice for everyone. We will now move it over to the Q&A portion. So we can go over to the next slide, please. A common question that I've seen come through the inbox is students just want to know, are there any, and Stephanie, I know we've talked about this, I'm curious others' perspective, are there certain computer languages like Java, Python, SQL, that you think students is really critical that they know for the PMT role, and just like any other specifics on of technical knowledge they should have before joining Amazon as a PMT?
I wouldn't say critical, but one that's really helpful is SQL. So Amazon has BI teams that can help you pull data, but if you can do it yourself, you can move a lot faster. So that's been really helpful.
Stephanie, I feel like we've talked about this before, and I know you've said the same thing. Is SQL, like Java, Python seem to be more of a nice to have, still good to have, but SQL seems to be the most critical. Anything additional?
Yeah, I would say SQL is the most critical. And with SQL, because of the nice AI large language model stuff, it helps a lot. You just need to know the basics and like how to work with a large language model to have them write the queries for you. So if you're able to do that, then you can get away with a lot of really cool things. And to Dorothy said, kind of move faster versus waiting on an intake and waiting in a queue with your BI team.
Absolutely. Thank you. Another question I have, Vincent from Fordham. I understand that writing and documentation are key aspects of the culture in this role. How do tech leads and developers typically contribute to creating and maintaining technical documentation? Are there any specific practices or tools that help facilitate this process?
So on technical documentation, there's a few flavors. So there's one which is actually in AWS, our customer facing ones, or our developer facing ones. How do you use our APIs? How do you, build on top of our software components? We actually have designated technical writers that maintain those for us and work with our engineering teams. Then there's the internal technical documentation. There are very technical designed ones that are focused on the technical design, like what is our infrastructure cost going to be like. Our engineering teams will lead those and kind of do those in parallel to your PRFAQ. Some of those actually get pulled into your PRFAQ. So you'll have an appendix in your PR of like, what are our options to implement this? So when you come up with an idea, there's technical limitations to it, or the idea and the perfect experience you want is going to cost $1 billion. And so you actually have to do a lot of iteration with your engineering team to figure out what is the right approach and a balance between getting the product you want versus feasibility and delivery timelines that you have to hit. And so when you write these docs, one thing, it's very collaborative. You do a lot of iterations. Like you might have what I call the pen and the owner of it, but you're not the only one contributing to it. So your engineers and tech leads will also be having those sections within the PRFAQ.
Thank you, Stephanie. Very helpful. Another question I see here is, can I apply to both the PMT and PM intern role? So yes, absolutely. You are able to apply to as many roles as you would like. But with that said, you'll only be selected to interview for one. So I would recommend applying to the roles that you are interested in, but fine to apply to both. Another question I have from Tian Su from Booth. I want to learn more about the difference between PMT and software and hardware.
This one. So I've worked on both hardware and software in my current role for Just Walk Out. So our technology uses a mix of vision algorithms and cameras, and then also sensor technology. So you can be a PMT for either hardware or software. And I think a lot of the skills are the same. You still have to kind of work backwards from the customer, work with engineering teams to understand technical complexity. But one major difference that I've seen is, and Amazon is big on this, one-way versus two-way doors. So it's really easy to roll back a software change, and if you made a mistake or you want to like iterate on it, it's really hard to roll back from creating new hardware. So there's a lot more, I would say, like due diligence that goes into creating a piece of hardware that needs to last for X amount of years. And there's also a lot more focus on like CapEx costs. So there might be more cost implications for a hardware PMT to understand.
Thank you. Super helpful there. Another question I'm seeing is, are there full-time PMT roles available? So currently, the only full-time role that we have available is for our MBA Leadership Development Program. However, I encourage everyone to look on Amazon.jobs. Should new roles become available, they will be posted there. But again, at this time, we are recruiting specifically for the Senior Product Manager Technical Internship. So now our final question, and then we will wrap this up, is Devisha from CMU. I want to check on some of the challenges you face as a PMT and how you overcome them. Any volunteers for that one?
I can talk about this a little bit. Some of the challenges that you'll commonly face as a PMT is driving consensus and working across teams. Those are two things I think that are important for any product manager, regardless of Amazon, where often a PM doesn't necessarily have formal authority and you have to influence in an informal fashion other teams and people to do what you want. So how do you do that? That is a great question. I think having the proper documentation and data really helps, especially with Amazon. It's a very data heavy organization. And so if you can point to actual, impacts and numbers, then it usually helps move the needle a bit. People also are really willing to work with you across the org because, we ultimately are one company driving to a similar outcome and goal. So even if there are, differences amongst direction or what needs to be prioritized, ultimately it's helpful that, we're all working under the same umbrella and trying to march in the same direction. I don't know if Dorothy or Stephanie, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. That was very helpful. If there's anything else, feel free to chime in. If not, we will wrap the session for today. All right. Well, thank you to our panelists for joining us today to learn more about the Senior Product Manager technical role. Thank you to everyone, students who have joined us. Again, the Senior PMT intern application is now live. We thank you for joining us today and wish you all the best in the recruitment process. Bye, everyone.
Good luck.
Bye.
Bye.